Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. And in this video, I want to look at dignities of planets and how I use dignities. And this one was also a request. Somebody asked me to do this video. Been thinking about it for a little while and finally decided it's time to make this video about the dignities of planets and what I look for when I determine the dignity of a planet. So I'm going to share my screen. First of all, guys, don't forget to hit the like button, please, if you can, and subscribe if you haven't already. And a big shout out to those who made it to my class last night. It was a lot of fun. We went over time. We talked about so many different things, and it was super interesting. And I'm going to try and make it as regular as possible. I'll let you know if some weeks I'm not having it, but just stay tuned. And yeah, I do plan on having it this coming up Sunday. So let me know if you'd like to attend. Just shoot me an email. If you're already on my list, don't worry. I'll send out the link, and you can join as you like or not. No need to let me know. Just show up. And yeah, but if you're not on my list, email me and I'll get you that link. All right. All right, I'm going to use my chart as an example. And so basic dignity is planet in sign, right? That's the first thing. Like, obviously, you can use, if you have a software, which most people don't have a software, I understand, because they're pretty expensive, but we can sort of utilize my software for now. I didn't have a software program for a long time. It's not necessary, and I'll show you on the internet best way to use to do astrology without a software. But you can see they added the score here, and this is, I mean, it's just a relative score. There's other factors, but ruler is going to be the first thing, right? Now I don't have any planets in domicile, which would be, the best, obviously, like Sun in Leo. That would be super strong. And we'll just go through the list. Venus in Taurus or Libra, Mercury in Gemini or Virgo, Mars in Scorpio or Aries. Then we get Jupiter in Pisces or Sag, Saturn in Capricorn or Aquarius. And then the outer planets definitely still have dignities. Uranus would be Aquarius, Pluto Scorpio, and Neptune Pisces, right? So that's the first thing I would take note of. The second one would be exaltation, and the exalted planets. When a planet is in domicile, it is. Forgive me 1 second. Just need to bring up my the video image just so I know it's doing it right. Okay, sorry. When a planet's in domicile, it's like it's at home. It's like, it's in its own domain. It's in its own turf. It's in its own kingdom. It rules the roost. It's completely comfortable. It's totally confident, and it's strong, right? It knows it. It knows where it is. It's like, has the support of its home ground, right? When it's exalted, it's in not in its own home anymore, but it's in a place that it really loves, and it's kind of like a very complementary, right? So we'll go through each one, and I'll just say a little bit about it. So, like the Sun in Aries, the Sun is our ego, it's our pride, it's the way we show up in the world and relate to worldliness. The Sun, it's not our truest sense of self, but you could say that it's how we relate to the world at large and how the world views us. So, just a quick word about the difference between the Sun and the ascendant or ascendant Lord is that the sun is a star. It's the biggest, brightest thing. It's what people see us as mostly in relationship to how we relate to everything in the world. The ascendant is not only our body and not only our head, which it is both those things too, and ascendant Lord as well. So for me, it would be Scorpio, 3 degrees Scorpio, and my Mars in Leo, conjunct the MC. By the way, the ascendant, if you want to get the full picture, it's the ascendant planets in the first house, or conjunct the ascendant from the 12th, plus your ascendant Lord's position and sign, right? So Leo is still a part of my ascendant. It's still a part of my ascendant Lord. Being conjunct the MC is still a part of the same qualities that the ascendant has. So like my head, my body, but my personal sense of self. And the way you differentiate that, the way I see it, is when you're not relating to the world, when you're home alone by yourself, just being completely natural and organic, your deepest sense of self relates to your ascendant and ascendant Lord and first house planets, and then any aspects to the ascendant Lord or planets in the first house or ascendant itself, right? All those factors play in, but it's a deeply personal sense of self, right? Versus, rise and shine. Let's go out and be a part of life. That invokes the sun. The sun gets activated in that way, but you can feel the difference, right? The moon also comes into play when we're alone by ourselves, right? That's also going to be a part of things, but that's like a more emotional, like needy. The moon has a neediness to it because it wants like to be satisfied, right? That's a very inherent quality of the moon. But let's go into the signs. So sun is exalted in Aries because Aries is a go-getter. Aries is action-oriented. Aries is first. Aries is number one. That's not arbitrary. You can't separate the numbers from the sign, the archetypes of the sign. Being number one is an integral, inherent part of Aries nature. It's not just like, haphazardly, it's just the first because whatever, like, and it has no relation. No, the numbers have complete relationship to the archetype of the sign. So like the sun exalts when it's made number one because it's the ego and the pride. Like it's all about the self. It's all about the differentiation. It's all about me, right? And my right to rule as an independent person, and it's a very powerful position for the sun to be in. It's not completely like when the sun is in Leo, then it's like the king on the throne. When the sun is in Aries, the king is like leading the army, right? It's a bit different, but it's still supercharged, super powerful. The king loves that, right? It's like exciting for the king to be in Aries. He gains a lot of power and aggressive force, ability to like start things, right? Initiate and inspire and be fiery. Then next would be Mercury. And now Mercury is a funny one, and there is debate about this, but like obviously domiciles in Gemini and domiciles in Virgo, but it's also exalted in Virgo. And somebody's made a case for like, oh, why is Mercury, that's not fair, and Aquarius has no exaltation, so Mercury should be exalted in Aquarius. Listen, astrologers have been doing this for a long time, brilliant people, and there are very valid reasons for Mercury being exalted in Virgo. Part of it has to do with the organic nature of our solar system, being that these signs are definitely archetypal in nature, meaning that, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, the 12, there's a certain inherent harmony that would exist in every solar system, there are many solar systems in the universe, right? Many, like billions or trillions, who knows how many. Just start thinking about the expansiveness of the universe, right? And it's mind-boggling. Secondly, the planets in our solar system are kind of unique. There's a certain organic quality that is just spontaneous chance that plays into the whole role of life. you know, everywhere, not only life on Earth, but like life in general. There's a spontaneous quality, an organic quality that it just so happens to have formed this way, right? And we have these planets. They are aligning with certain resonances and certain frequencies that will embody different archetypes, right? Just like you look in nature and there's certain archetypes that keep repeating itself, right? Like I'm not going to go into it too much, but like you can see patterns repeating all over, everywhere. You know, different body parts look like different foods, if you ever notice that, right? And that's because those are similar archetypes. They're embodying different natural organic archetypes. So my point is that the planets will embody different natural organic archetypes, right? But they're going to express it in different ways, right? And it's always going to be different. It's always going to be unique. And the point being is that there's a certain element of spontaneous organic creation that is, although following organic archetypes, is still just a unique expression unto itself. And because of that, then we have these anomalies that don't seem to fit this perfect order. Like we want things to fit in a perfect order, but life has both sides, where one side is the divine heavenly perfection and the earthly organicness that is spontaneous. And you know, you'll get apples that are imperfect, and you're going to get, you know, animals or plants that are just don't seem to fit, you know, perfectly in the way we might ideally imagine them to. And so there's going to be some organic quality to astrology, in other words, because Mercury is, although there are organic archetypes, not organic, in heavenly archetypes that these planets will try and not try, but automatically fall into. There's going to be the organic expression, and these are planets unto themselves. These are huge bodies in the space. So they're having, you know, their own nature. They're having their own expressive expression. So Mercury, we say, is exalted in its own domicile. So that's a uniqueness. That's something that is completely, you know, unique to our astrology, right? It is what it is, and it works, and it makes sense. It's, you know, Mercury's not exalted in Aquarius. There's just not enough. It just doesn't work that way, and that's not the point of this. But anyway, people have been doing this for a long time. A lot of people agree, many brilliant people. And so there's not much question about it. Mercury is exalted in Aquarius, or Aquarius, Virgo. And Virgo is, you know, incredibly intellectual, sharp-minded, perfectionist, precision-oriented, you know. So, all right, let's move on. Venus, obviously domicile in Taurus and Libra, and then exalted in Pisces. So Venus exalted in Pisces. Pisces is all about, what I envision Pisces is the expansive ocean, right? And there's a certain boundarylessness that comes with being in the ocean. And there's two sides of the ocean. First of all, the surface, where we can get reflections. And because of that, there's the association with mirage, illusion, creation, fantasy, alter ego, ghostly kind of images. And that's why Pisces is so creative, because it can produce any sort of imagination image it wants, right? And that's what creation is all about. It's like imagining like a song or a movie or a story or whatever, right? An artistic piece, you know, like a painting or dance or whatever. But beneath the ocean, there's kind of like a loss and an expansive quality. Venus, being romance, it has some certain things in common: creativity, beauty, arts, femininity. It loses itself in the ocean of Pisces, right? The vast expansiveness in Pisces. And therefore it can become extremely creative, and in like the romantic sense, it evokes a sort of unconditional love, right? This love that has no boundaries. And so with that, there's a sense of exaltation. Like Venus can really just be like, it's, you know, a very exaggerated version of itself. The other thing they say about exaltation is that there is a sense of bloatedness with exaltation, like versus Domicile. Domicile is like complete confidence. It's just like, you know, when you have like a lot of confidence, you don't need to exaggerate, right? You're just like, no, I'm good. Like I'm good, right? But when there's this exaltation, it's overly dramatized, it's overly blown, overly expanded, exaggerated. It's, you know, that's the thing that happens with exaltation. It just feels like too much, you know, kind of like overexcited, like you're going on vacation and you're staying at this, you know, your most ideal luxury resort. You're just like, oh, everything is over the top, right? That's sort of like the feeling with planets and in exaltation. It's like this overly dramatic, overblown, expanded, kind of overly excited state that can sort of, you know, there can be like, you can overdo it with exaltation. It can just be like overdone, right? And then we go to Mars. Mars exalted in Capricorn, and Capricorn provides this tremendous structure for Mars, right? It's like where the soldiers like training to like become one of the elite, you know, or like, you know, martial arts training or any kind of physical training where or even in like business, if there's some kind of like physicality, somebody who's like trained to the very high level and really disciplined and really knows how to use their Martian energy in like very controlled but well-developed way, right? That's sort of like the Mars in Capricorn exaltation, right? Like you don't mess with Mars in Capricorn because they trained really long time with a lot of discipline and really hard work, and they know their stuff, right? Then Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Cancer evokes the heart, the motherly caring archetype, and these are all things that Jupiter can really excel at. Jupiter is very generous, very kind of benevolent. It's one of the two benevolent, most benevolent planets, Jupiter and Venus. Jupiter brings success, and here it can really, and wisdom and high-mindedness, philosophy, exuberance, faith in life. And in Cancer, it's just evoking the heartfelt qualities, heartfelt wisdom of the heart, loving, caring nature, nurturing nature. And it just does really, really well. It's like, you know, very generous towards all its children, you know, which it can be like basically everyone, you know, loving, caring, nurturing, protective. And then Saturn, Saturn, where's that? Libra, right? So Libra, Saturn is exalted in Libra because Saturn's the authority, it's the rule of law, it's the expert or the master, the old person. And so Saturn in Libra is excellent with sort of fairness and equality and being like a judge. You know, you don't want a young judge, you want an old judge, right? Because they're the ones who have the experience, they have the knowledge, they have the fairness, they're going to be firm but fair, right? You know, it's like justice, like you're not going to get away with anything with Saturn in Libra, but you're going to get a fair deal, right? You're going to get the fairest deal because you're going to get the wisdom of mastery and age, plus, you know, complete non-bias. Libra has the ability to see all sides of the situation, and it's not going to just be like one-sided, unfair, like sort of like Saturn in Aries, where in debility, where it's like totally biased, totally dictator, total tyranny. It's like, my way or death. It's like, right. Aries is too hard, too firm, too aggressive for a planet like Saturn, which Saturn wants to serve the people, right? It's the government, it's the rule of law. We don't want a very selfish, biased law that's just thinks about number one, which is the self, right? That's tyranny, that's dictatorship, right? So those are all the positive. And we can go through the negatives too. Let's see. So I'll just try and I don't want to make this too long, but like, okay, for Sun, then domicile in Leo. I think the Sun does okay in Aquarius. I love Aquarius suns, to be honest, but it is in detriment. Let's see, Sun in Aquarius, I mean, they can be crazy, and I have seen it, I have seen some crazy Aquarian suns, but they're brilliant, they're unique, they're different. But I don't think it's like necessarily yeah, I think what happens with Sun and Aquarius, they have to not let themselves become too mental. Aquarius is fixed air. It's a very creative air sign. Air signs are not so creative in themselves, but the fixed air tends to be a bit more creative. That's why Aquarius can be inventive, right? Like they can invent things. That's a kind of that's a mental creativity, right? They have to not become overly their weakness is becoming too intellectual, right? And cutting the head from the body, becoming like too robotic, or like that. So that's a problem with Sun and Aquarius. But otherwise, I mean, maybe it's because I'm Sun in Gemini, that's why I like it. But so that's a negative. Sun in Libra tends to lose focus. There's too much people pleasing. There's too much it can either be too overly passive, just because they want to please everyone and they hate not being liked, and they become yes men and yes women, or sometimes they can become nasty and express like the darker side of Libra, which is just like crude, nasty. And that can work in like the arts or comedy. You'll see it. The really more crude, harsh, nasty kind of comics can have Sun in Libra. But sometimes, and it can go either way, like either like super nice, just super accommodating and pleasing, and then they can flip and become nasty. And but anyway, Sun in Libra tends to not have strong direction. They suffer from indecision and never knowing which way to go. Then Mercury is doubly negative in Pisces, because they just lose logic. They Mercury can't think very well in Pisces. It has a hard time gathering itself together because Pisces wants to dissolve and expand. It can help with creativity, and I've seen it work very well if other factors, which I'll get to, stationary. That's an important factor, but we'll look at that more later. But Mercury in Pisces needs to work a lot towards firming that their intellect and their logical ability. What it is good for actually is psychic qualities. If Mercury's in Pisces, these people can have strong psychic qualities. They can suffer from mental illness as well, things like schizophrenia, hearing voices, things like that, just losing their intellectual capacity, their grip on reality. So it can go either way, right? And it's a double negative because opposite domicile and exaltation. All right, Venus. Let's see, Venus in Aries, Scorpio, and Virgo. So yeah, I mean, Venus is in Aries, generally becomes quite selfish. Venus is a relationship planet. And these people are just like, they're not going to regard the other person in the relationship very well. They're just going to go after what they want. And that might mean like, like, ooh, new shiny object, you know, chasing after different people and leaving the other one behind, not even caring, being in a relationship, just leaving like because they found somebody better. Venus in Scorpio might be a little bit better because Scorpio is a relationship planet and Venus does have triplicity rulership over water, which I'll get to. That's another dignity element. But it's very intense relationships. It tends to suffer because it's like too heavy, too deep, too obsessive. The Scorpio can be like invoke a lot of pain, abuse, domination. So it's just like Venus suffers in Scorpio. It's like overly obsessive kind of relationships that are just painful and exhausting and all consuming. Right. But yeah, Venus in Virgo is extremely picky, right? They suffer because they just like nothing's ever good enough for Venus in Virgo, and they're going to criticize their partner. They're never going to be satisfied. They're going to be, it's the type of like, why are there no good men out there? Why are there no good women? Like, everyone's dumb and stupid. But Venus in Virgo can be good for being like very critical in the arts and the creative types, right? Because Venus is very creative. So these can be like fashion designers, art critics, music critics, producers, editors, that sort of thing. That they're going to have a bit more on the back end side of the creative world, to really make the creative thing perfect, right? They know exactly what it should look like, what it should sound like, what it should feel like. Then Mars. So Mars in Libra can be passive aggressive, and Mars in Libra can really just sort of feel like it's not even there at times, just because it doesn't know how to assert itself, or it can be passive aggressive behind the scenes. Like up front, it's too sort of like Sun and Libra, like too people pleasing, but then behind the scenes, it's doing things that are not so savory, if you will, not so honest. Doesn't want to own up to its own actions and responsibilities. Yeah, like that. Bit underhanded. It doesn't want to be itself in Libra. In Taurus, it's not so bad because Taurus is a bit more firm, right? Taurus, Mars and Taurus can be fighters, but they're perpetually annoyed. And Mars does have a triplicity rulership over Taurus, third triplicity ruler. So yeah, there are fighters that are in Taurus, because Taurus is like the bull, right? And you can think of like an angry bull. Not so. There's no real grace with Mars and Taurus. It's either avoidance, where they don't want to fight because they don't want to, if they know if they get angry, they're like a bull in a china shop. They're going to break stuff, right? I'm trying not to curse. Mars and Taurus, when they're angry, is very aggressive. It's a force to be reckoned with, because this stable, steady, fixed Earth now is becoming agitated and aggressive. You can see like all that weight, all that mass is like, now it's like, getting angry, and it's got its horns and its hooves, and it's like, it's gonna do damage, so it doesn't want to. But if it wants to, if it's a fighter, there are fighters with Mars and Taurus. These are very aggressive people, right? And these are very forceful warriors when they want to be. All right. Mars in Cancer. Mars in Cancer can be overly sexual. because Mars, Mars is a very sexual planet. It's the Venus and Mars are the two planets that are most sexual, right? Venus is the female sexuality, Mars is the male sexuality. And Mars in Cancer can be overly sexual, because Cancer is evoking all those emotions, right? And now it's becoming like, very wet, right? Yeah, so sexuality and violence, because Mars is that aggression, and Cancer is emotional, and Mars in Capricorn is so controlled, right? But if they need to act, they're going to be fierce competitors, right? Versus Mars in Cancer, not so controlled, not controlled at all, just sort of, you're reckless and violent and, on a whim, like just, lashing out like because of their emotions, like crimes of passion, right? It's Mars in Cancer. And then, probably periods of, perhaps crying about it, or feeling bad, or just like, not like, down on themselves, violent towards themselves even. It's unstable. The emotions are very, moody, right? It's a moody Mars. Jupiter, right? So Jupiter and Gemini and Virgo, both of these are very intellectual Jupiters, good for intellectual pursuits, right? If you're writing, or in the academic world, or perhaps even for Gemini, comedy. Jupiter in Aquarius is excellent for comedy as well, but Jupiter in Gemini would be too. Not so much for Virgo, but the academics, the intellect, great. But what it does do is it contracts the mind. These people have difficult time with religion, philosophy, higher-mindedness. They might become depressed from time to time, lose faith in God, lose faith in life, not understand the bigger picture. Jupiter in Capricorn, it's debilitated here. So it's like, Jupiter and Capricorns are great for Capricornian things like business, right? Climbing the corporate ladder, being successful in a worldly way. But again, Jupiter and Capricorn can really suffer from depression, from nihilism, atheism, agnosticism, just having no faith in God or humanity, and as such, sometimes they can do really bad things, right? Hitler had Jupiter in Capricorn. I forgot about the moon. I think I skipped the moon. Both in exaltation, and did I? Well, all right. So moon's in domicile in Cancer, but moon is exalted. I think I didn't do this. Moon's exalted in Taurus because Taurus is fixed Earth, and it's very sensual and beautiful and creative. And moon is easily satisfied here in Taurus. It just becomes happy with like good food, healthy bank account, nice furniture and nice house and good music and good friends and all the easy things that relatively easy to come by. It's not super hard. Obviously, you need and there are some moon in Tauruses who don't need to be rich. It's not like every moon in Taurus needs like tons of money, but just like enough of the basic necessities and good food and good quality things like that. It's easier to please the moon in Taurus, and they're not going to be overly emotional. Taurus is going to stabilize the moon. Moon in Scorpio is very intense, right? The emotions become like very sensitive and painful. There can be issues with trauma or abuse. Thinking about death, experiences with death and such, and very dark-minded, very turbulent emotional nature, right? And similarly, moon in Capricorn, these people have a very difficult time expressing themselves. right? It's not that they don't have good hearts or well-meaning. It's just they don't. It's not easy for them to express love, affection, care, concern, and they don't really need it as much either. Um, they prefer to be more business oriented, more cold, more hard, more like let's get to work. And if and you know um they can do without the more social comforts that other people need on a regular basis. In other words, like they can be cold and distant and responsible and mature, family, friends, partners, whatever, but they don't need that the same level of warmth and emotional kind of connection that other people do, and so they can be neglectful in that sense. You might think that they're just super distant, they don't care. They actually do care, but unless they feel like it's an obligation or responsibility, they might not show up, right? They might not be there, they might not show warmth, right? But if you let them know that they have to, it'll be part of their work schedule, right? They like be human. That's on the checklist. Be a good person. Be warm. Show my family, friends, partners, lovers, whatever, whoever, that I actually do care about them. Right. That'll be a part of the way they operate, almost robotic. And I don't mean to be harsh on them, but I have several family members who are like this, and they're all the same. Of course, there are other mitigating factors, but yeah. Much more Capricornian nature, but like where, it's hard for them. Also, they suffer too, right? They don't know how to have that emotional contact, closeness, I should say. Yeah. So where are we? We did Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. So Saturn, so I have Saturn in Leo. So we'll start there. Saturn in Leo is very arrogant, right? And here I'm criticizing myself, right? Giving myself away. Because Leo is the king and Saturn's the authority. So this is not a very fair Saturn. It's not a Saturn that you want ruling over you, because it's going to be very extremely demanding, very kind of self-oriented, tyrannical. But great. They can be good leaders if they learn how to think about other people and be fair-minded, balanced. I mean, I have Sun conjunct Venus to balance that out. Just saying there can be mitigating factors. It's not a one size fits all, but we have to parse it out, right? Yeah, there's too much ego in Sun and Leo. They want to rule with kind of as a king would rule. It's king's rule, which is not always the best. It's sort of like off with their heads. Kind of, it's not fair and balanced like Saturn and Libra. Saturn and Libra is really the height of fairness in leadership. Similarly, Saturn in Aries is even many ways probably worse, because at least there's some like heart in Leo. And maybe I'm just being biased, but Leo can be very loving, very heartfelt, very what's the word? Just big-hearted, magnanimous. Aries is quite aggressive, and so that Saturn, which is like structural, becomes brittle in the fire signs, especially Leo and Aries. So it's like kind of hardness, brittleness, dictatorial, tyrannical, just like fierce, like this is it, this is the way it goes, like don't question, if you step out of line, if you question, it's the type to like just, like you're fired or like you're dead, depending on what kind of leader it is. Yeah, it's just brutal dictatorship in Aries. It's no room for flexibility. And what else? Cancer, again, Saturn in Cancer is the emotional bringing out the emotional, you don't want to lead your leader to lead by emotions, because then it's just whimsical, it's moody, it's one day this way, the other day that way. It can be cruel, violent, permissive in various ways. It's just not going to be strong leadership. It's too emotional, too wet, too moody, too changeable, for a good, strong Saturn. And the motions can get dark, right? It can lean towards violence, cruelty, like I said, permissive about sexuality, other things like that. Depressive. In any case. And then the outer planets, right? These you can take, well, I guess there's some debate on it. I don't know. Anyway, Uranus, being the co-ruler of Aquarius, is considered exalted in Scorpio. That's my one exaltation by sign. And it's on the ascendant, so that's pretty good, I think. So yeah, Uranus is domicile in Aquarius, where it's brilliant, genius, independent, electric, eclectic, and then in Scorpio it sort of gets very deep, right? And you can see this sort of, like, if you look at the generations, you get a feel for it. The outer planets have the most influence on the generations, right? So like Scorpio, Uranus in Scorpio was the start of the punk era. So it's this wild, rebellious, expressive, dark, spiky kind of energy that's really cool, in my opinion. I mean, musically, artistically, socially, politically, it was really excellent. Uranus has strong correlation with social and political awareness, because it's outside the realm of Saturn. It's a very big view, right? And freedom, it's pretty much defined. If you want to understand Uranus, you have to understand it as it relates to Saturn. That Saturn, considering itself the rule, the authority, Saturn ate all its children, and it castrated Uranus, because Uranus was the father of Saturn. So Uranus is above Saturn, but Saturn still wants to rule. So there's a competition between Uranus and Saturn. But Uranus is defined by being the father of Saturn, by being outside of Saturn's realm and rule. So there's freedom and rebellion and kind of like irreverence for the law, right? The law, all the laws and all the authorities are beneath Uranus, right? That's very crucial in understanding Uranus. And it gains a lot of power, a lot of depth, because Uranus is all about expansion, right? It's like the expansion of space. And in Scorpio, it goes deep. So now you have deep and wide. It's just a really powerful, strong combination. They can relate very well with things like astrology, occultism, just aware, like Scorpio wants to peer through the veils, and Uranus is above and beyond the veils, if you will. Like, it's just complete awareness. It's saying it's got the not the 30,000 foot view, but the outer space view, right? It's just like aware of the whole world. It's watching the world, right? And so that's a really strong combination. Uranus, where we have it right now, is debilitated in Taurus, and it gets stuck in the mud. It's like trying to run an electric current through mud, and it's pretty obvious that if you know anything about electricity, there's a thing called resistance. There's too much resistance in Taurus. It just doesn't move. It gets stuck. There's no real progress. There's no real change. However, what it is good for is changing very, very stuck things. Like if you have planets in Taurus, Uranus will create radical change, and that's good for Taurian planets, because Taurus, out of all the signs, is the most stuck. It doesn't want to change at all. So in some senses, I mean, that is a good quality to have. In all the here's one thing that I've learned. Planets in poor dignity still have their uses, still have their values, and can be used in good ways and healthy ways and proper ways, right? You have to learn how to use them well, but they can work well. They do work well. I've seen it. I've seen people use them in very, very productive ways, right? So just put that in the bank. So Uranus and Leo, like I'm not going to say much because I would have to witness it, but let's we could just sort of game this out a little bit. I haven't really given it much thought because it's like, when are we going to see Uranus and Leo? I mean, I guess if you're looking at older generations charts, Uranus and Leo, again, is similar to Saturn and Leo in that there's too much ego and pride. Uranus wants to be social and political and big-minded about society. And in Leo, it's all about the individuation of the self, and the ego and the pride. And there's too much kingship. And what Uranus and Leo will have in common is that both Leo, or I should say the sun, which is the ruler of Leo, and Uranus have this quality of confidence. They're extremely confident, both the planets. I mean, Leo, the sun, is the king, and Uranus is a god. Uranus is the father of all the other gods, right? So they have this quality. If you look mythologically, it was Uranus and Gaia created all the other gods. And the sun is a bit outside that. I think it's sort of outside that mythology. But as far as the planets go, Uranus has extreme confidence just because it knows it's outside of all the other planets, and it's the father of all the other planets, including Neptune and Pluto. It's the grandfather, right? Saturn's the father, Uranus is the grandfather. So it has a very confident quality to it. So in Leo, it's just like arrogantly confident, right? Okay. In any case, then we'll get to Neptune. I've heard Neptune is exalted in Sag. I don't know if it is, but let's say it does have some affinity because both Jupiter and Neptune are domicile in Pisces, right? So it has this affinity with Jupiter already. So you can see that, like, Neptune in Sag is I always think about Star Wars. That's when Star Wars came out, and Neptune relates to movies, music, arts, creativity, fantasy, things like that. And Sagittarius is all about like adventure and being grand and big and high-minded and the quest for truth. And so you can see how that fits really well. Neptune would not work so well in Virgo, right? Because it's opposite domicile. Neptune and Virgo would, again, sort of like Jupiter and Virgo, it's going to do good for Virgo things, right? Writing, being analytical, editing, for the backside of creative, like if they were going to work in movies, they would be like editing, producing type stuff. Or like in the case of Barbara Walters, who I just did, who had Neptune and Virgo, being on the screen, but as a journalist, as somebody who's not acting or not pretending, right? Virgo doesn't really want to be, doesn't want to pretend so much. One just wants to be, perfect and analytical and mental and like that. So yeah, it's going to be, the imagination is going to be contracted in Virgo. And similarly in Gemini, I mean, if we take Sagittarius to be the exaltation, then similarly to Jupiter and Gemini, it's going to be good for Gemini things, but the imagination again is going to be contracted, right? We'll just leave it at that. Pluto. Pluto, obviously domicile in Scorpio. And so in Taurus, it's just going to, Pluto brings power and change and destruction and transformation, transmutation, psychology and occult. The deepest societal changes happen through the Pluto transits, right? That's where you really get the most transformation, the most power, the deepest struggles. In Taurus, I think it's just it's gonna struggle a lot, right? It's just Taurus, number one, doesn't want to change. So there's a bit of a similarity between Uranus in Taurus and Pluto in Taurus, in that there's going to be a lot of resistance. Things are going to get stuck. Food, finances, these are things that could, be troublesome. And I'd have to look historically to go into more detail, but it's not going to flow well. It's not going to move well. It's not going to be all that great for society. Difficulties. And then they say that the boomers, Pluto and Leo, Pluto was exalted. Different people say different things. I heard Pluto is exalted in Aquarius, which we're about to see, which I can't wait for. And I think there is some good energy with there. But in any case, Pluto and Leo, that's the generation that was really all about, personal empowerment, domination. Like the boomers are like, a lot of them are super successful, but in very, individualistic ways. They tend to just be like these dynamo personas, very powerful. And that's why the Pluto and Scorpio tend to clash with the boomers the most, right? But the Pluto in Aquarius should be very interesting because the power is moving into the people. Aquarius represents society, the awakening of society, the individuality within society. It's all about utopian versus dystopian society. So that's where the struggle is going to be. That's where the power is going to be. People are going to wake up. There's going to be massive uprisings, massive awakening. The masses are really going to evolve their thinking, become independent, becoming very Uranian, right? Very Aquarian, right? That's where the struggle and power is going to be. So that's a bit about the signs. Exaltation, domicile, detriment, and debility, right? So the other another dignity is by the house, the placement, right? And so different planets do well in different houses. First of all, angular houses, if they're in an angular house, 1st, 10th, 4th, 7th, that's considered good. That's considered strong. They have more dignity there, right? Like Barbara Walters had her sun in Libra, so it was debilitated, but it was right on the MC. And so that's a debilitated sun that's going to behave well because it gains a lot of, it gains a lot of dignity being angular, being on the MC. Ascendant. So let's go with each planet because it's a little bit different with each planet, right? Sun will gain dignity. First of all, any angle, like all the planets do well on the angles, but conjunct the MC is a great one for the sun, and they become very ambitious to reach the top. To have a very powerful public career, to become famous, to become noteworthy, or on the ascendant, they become very iconic. These are people who are just shine as individuals. Their name is remembered, throughout history. A lot of times, they just become, super powerful in themselves, right? In their identity. Then we have Mercury. Mercury also loves being on the ascendant. Mercury on the ascendant or in the 1st house is super quick-minded. like the intellect is right up front. Like they don't suffer from sort of like the kind of slowness of mind that can happen to some people. That happens to me. I mean, this Mercury and Taurus can be a bit slow sometimes. But yeah, it's like the witty, clever, smart, funny, intellectual, just like, snappy kind of. Or on the MC, again, 10th house, Mercury will do very well. Public speaking, manager, just generally good for, very public oriented intellectual capacity, right? Communicating, writing, just relating to the public. Venus. So Venus, I think, does really well in the 4th house, where it's happy at home, beautiful gardens, artistic creativity. Home is where the heart is. It's just a love of the homeland and of the home itself, and a lot of good things there. You'd think Venus is good in the 7th, but there's actually it's not great, because Venus in the 7th is just like obsessed with relationships, and that can be bad, because it's like, even if you have a relationship, you're still obsessed with other potential relationships, and then it's like a mess. You become overly flirty and whatnot and stuff like that. Venus on the ascendant can make a beautiful person, right? Very feminine, very great looks, very Venusian, right? Creative, beautiful, wonderful personality, things like that. Let's see. Moon obviously is going to be excellent at home, similar to Venus. Love home. Home is where the heart is. Happy childhood, happy home. Just loves being at home, loves the homeland. And yeah. Where else? I mean, moon on the ascendant or in the 1st house can be great for expression. Like they wear the heart on the sleeves, and they're just, hilarious or expressive. Their moon is just coming right out into their face. On the descendant, it's okay. They can be very caring people towards others. They can be counselors, caretakers, just good friends. They really like to have, they love personal relationships, so they're very caring people like that. Mars loves to be conjunct the MC, like I have it. So yeah, so my Mars has excellent dignity as far as being, conjunct the MC, or in the 10th house. Mars in the 10th house is, all their physical energy is going towards career, public works. It's not a personal place, so like, anger and aggression is not directed towards anyone personally, like it would be in the 7th house. It's directed towards public things. So like, I just know from my own experience, like if I get angry, it's very easy for me to not direct it at anyone personally, but publicly. So therefore nobody has to take offense. But just in general, it's great for like working hard and like, constantly striving to achieve more and to, be the best. And, it's a really good way to utilize that Martian energy. The 6th house also very good for Mars, because competition, hard work, service to others. Mars in the 6th can be, excellent for any sort of like competitive sports, right? Or winning over the enemies, things like that. Jupiter loves being in the 1st house or conjunct the ascendant. When I say conjunct the ascendant, I even mean like if it's within 15 degrees in the 12th house, preferably in the same sign. If it's out of sign, then not so much. But if it's in the, like if you have a late degree ascendant and within 15 degrees in the 12th quadrant, it's conjunct the ascendant, then it's still it still counts, right? So Jupiter in the first, they make excellent teachers, very wise. It expands the persona, makes them very generous, big, bigger than life. There's kind of like this Jupiterian figure. Great people, right? Jupiter also can be excellent in the 10th house or conjunct the MC, where it gives success to the career, right? The public image, the career, does very well with Jupiter there. Saturn. Saturn, they say, does excellent in the 7th house. There, the relationships can become, very mature and long-lasting. Saturn extends things, makes things last a long time. So like maybe when young, there can be difficulty with relationships because Saturn takes a while, depending on the sign dignity and aspects, right? If it's in good dignity, then, it shouldn't take too long before you find a really stable, long-lasting relationship. They also say Saturn is good in the 12th. Why is it good in the 12th? I think it would tend to limit expression and creativity, but it probably stabilizes the subconscious mind and prevents things from going bad in that area. I don't know, like it seems like it would be mixed to me, but I guess I'd have to observe that one more. I think Saturn is also good in the 10th house, because then it gives a long career, and it can be good or bad. I mean, because obviously if it's not a good sign and has bad aspects, it can delay and restrict the career, right? But eventually it'll give a long, stable career, right? And did I get all the signs for the position? All the planets? I mean, the outer planets, they're difficult. These are malefics. It's not necessarily better to have them on the ascendant, because then you're talking about personal, like Uranus on the ascendant can mean accidents, right? Uranus in Scorpio on the ascendant can mean accidental sudden death, right? So is that a good thing? I don't know. Pluto can mean death too, right? Neptune can mean drugs, alcohol, illusion, delusion, fantasy, right? So I think trines are safer with the outer planets, generally speaking. They can be very powerful, they can be very dynamic, they can be, really make someone, but they can also break someone, and they can make someone and break someone, both, right? So you have to be careful with these planets. It's not just necessarily like, oh, you have, Pluto on the ascendant, that's so powerful, you're a powerful person. Well, yeah, it could backfire too. They could, die young, or, be destructive, or who knows, right? Or with Neptune, drugs and alcohol. Uranus, accidents, right? In any case, now there's several more types of dignity. Triplicity. So you can, if you have a program that looks up I'll just tell you the triplicity. You have to learn them. You have to look it up. There's day and night triplicity, and the triplicity means the elements, right? What's the other word for it? Let's call them the elements. So like fire element is a triplicity. Water is water triplicity, air triplicity, and earth triplicity. The triplicities have rulers. So the fire triplicity rulers are Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn, and then there's day and night ones. So like the day triplicity ruler for the fire signs is Sun. The night triplicity ruler for fire signs is Jupiter. And when I say day or night, it's usually this is classical or Hellenistic astrology, whether the sun is in the daytime, whether they're born between sunrise and sunset like I am, or if they're born at nighttime, right? So you'd use them differently, and I'm not going to go into lengthy discussion about that, but And then the third triplicity for fire is Saturn. And so there's different ways to use them, and it's a whole deep subject. You have to look that up. But if a planet is in its triplicity, it gives some extra dignity. And I do use that. I do look at that. Like for Saturn, Saturn's not good in Leo, but it has some dignity, being that it is a fire triplicity ruler. And same with, it would be the same with Aries, but not so with Cancer, right? So that, take that into consideration. The Earth triplicity rulers are daytime would be Venus, nighttime would be Moon, and third triplicity ruler is Mars. That's for the Earth side, Earth ones, right? So Moon here in Virgo has some dignity. Venus in Virgo would have some dignity too. And it doesn't have to be just like, if it's day, then, you know, only use the day ruler. That has some significance, but you have to study that independently. Yeah, and then like Mars and Taurus would have some dignity because it is the third triplicity. And if, yeah, I have it written down, and that's why I keep looking over, because I don't actually like to memorize things. I know some people are like, they get off on being able to memorize everything, you know, like I actually like to keep my mind very light and empty. It's a Gemini thing, you know, it makes me more, you know, mobile, more mutable, more, you know, like, you know, when you're light, you can move fast, you know what I mean? So I don't like to remember a lot of things. Some people think it's like, you know, like where's the badge of honor? I memorized the whole encyclopedia. I'm like, I don't care. All right. So air triplicity are Saturn, Mercury, and Jupiter. So if you have Saturn in Gemini, you know, that's the Saturn Libra is exalted. Saturn in Gemini has the triplicity rulership. Or an Aquarius, well, it's in domicile in Aquarius, but Saturn in Gemini has some dignity, right? As does Mercury in all the air signs and Jupiter in all the air signs, right? So even Jupiter in Gemini, there is still going to be, you know, some triplicity dignity from triplicity rulership, third triplicity ruler. Right. And then water, again, is the same as Earth. So it's Venus, Mars, and Moon, but in a different order, right? So Venus, even in Scorpio, still has some dignity, right? Versus Venus in Aries does not have any dignity, and Venus in Virgo does have some dignity. Right, so Venus in Aries has no dignity, but the other two it does. Mars, you know, Mars in Cancer has some dignity, right? Because it's water triplicity, and in Pisces as well, and then Moon in the water signs, also. So that's triplicity dignity. That's minor, but it's something, right? And I think it does work. I think it's effective, but it's a minor one. And then the other two minor ones are term and face. Term, let me show you. Egyptian terms. There's different kinds of terms. These I don't use, right? But you can use them if you want to. It gets too detailed for me. And I'm not convinced they work, and I'll tell you why. Because there's different kinds of terms and people don't agree, and so if the expert astrologists who think it's very important to look at these things disagree, then I'm just sort of not going to worry about it because I don't find it necessary, and yeah, I just think it's just getting too micro for me, and it's kind of why I like to take the macro approach and just not be bogged down. I mean, that's maybe South Node Jupiter or Gemini, Sun and Venus. Like, I just don't want to I don't want to be overly concerned with too many details because I don't think it's necessary. Like, I really don't. Like, you can take note of it. And the outer terms are malefics, Saturn, Mars, Saturn, Mars, Saturn, Mars, and they're different for each one. And the starting ones are usually, there's a whole, you can watch videos, read articles, there's probably a lot of books even about these things. And yeah, and same with face. These you can see face here, but let me just show you. Face is also decans or decans, however you want to. So this is AstroDance, astro.com. This is the best website if you don't want to pay any money for an astrology program. Go to astro.com and create an account, and they have the best charts. And here I have the Egyptian terms and the these are Chaldean decans, but you can see here they're divided into 3 each one. And they might provide some information, they're interesting. These type of, there's different kinds of decans, and here's the other reason I don't use them. I'll show you. You can see that there's traditional decans, Chaldean decans, Manilus decans. Now, which ones are the right decans? I mean, if I'm going to make predictions and say, well, this is this, that's that, that's why this and that, I need to be confident that I'm speaking the truth, not just preference, not just nonsense, not just, superstition, right? Same with Egyptian terms, Chaldean terms, Ptolemaic terms, they change, right? And they're going to change dignity. And then, like, if I just use one, it's be like, oh yeah, this planet has extra dignity because of the terms and the decans or face, however you want to, which term you want to use. But it's like, okay, if somebody else is like, no, they don't have any dignity because I don't use those. I use these, and these are the right ones. And it's like, I'm just not going to use any of them because I don't have any personal confirmation that they actually worked, right? Some people might, but I tend to just, I'm not going to worry about it, right? So I don't use that, but I just wanted to point it out to show you that they exist. Some people do use that. Some people like that. I don't care. Let's go back and let me change it. That's why I don't use that wheel. I just use that wheel. There's enough information here. There's way more than enough information here to be completely satisfied with, understanding the true dignity of a planet without that. Then the other way I look at dignity of planets is aspects, conjunctions, and different aspects, right? So, for instance, all right, Mars is in Leo. It doesn't, Mars is trying its domicile in Aries. So, and let's see, it has no triplicity rulership, but it is conjunct the MC. That's good. And it's also conjunct its planet of the planet that rules its exaltation. Saturn rules Capricorn. Mars is exalting Capricorn. So there's some benefit to that. However, Saturn is not Capricorn. Saturn is a planet, an actual physical body in the, in space that's orbiting the sun. It's huge. It's massive. And this is an archetypal sign that, we give a certain, nature to, and we say that there's a relationship between Saturn and Capricorn. But Saturn, I just want you really need to understand that Saturn is an actual physical body, and Capricorn is a division, an archetypal division that, you could say emanates from the center of the earth, right? Into 12 equal parts, right? Based on the motion between the sun and the planet Earth and the sun. It's a revolution around the sun, right? There's a there's a energetic similarity, but they are not the same. So Mars does not become exalted when it conjuncts Saturn, but it does gain some Saturnian strength. It gains structure, it gains orderliness. Like Saturn and Mars combination will Saturn will tend to restrict Mars and make it work harder, right? If it's too heated, if it's in a fire sign and Saturn is not in good dignity itself, and they're too close, then it can become violent, right? Sometimes because then Mars is becoming like too restricted and too hot as well, and it's just like breaks out, and just like, wants to become overly physical, right? But if there's enough distance, and it depends on what's, obviously the dignity of Saturn, then it can become, very controlled. But regardless, Saturn wants to control Mars, wants to train Mars, wants to give Mars some extra dignity. So you have to look at each case. And then what signs is Mars ruling? Mars ruling the ascendant, right? And what Saturn's, and the sixth house. And then Saturn's ruling the third and fourth house. So like for me, I can tell you, Mars ruling the fourth house, Saturn ruling the fourth house, Saturn not in great dignity, but not terrible, has an aspect from the sun. And it's in a good, it's 10th whole sign house. So that's not bad, but it is opposite its domicile. And Saturn means old people and authority figures, and Mars represents me. So yeah, kind of like I was bullied by older people in my life, right? Like Saturn not being in great dignity, being an old person. This is me, this is Saturn. So whether you're talking about like teachers, bosses, grandparents, even parents, they all had this Saturnian quality, especially when I was younger, that was not in great dignity, that was a little bit too forceful for me and pushing me around. And because I'm represented by Mars, and both in Leo, it built up a lot of anger in me, a lot of resentment. But it, over time, that kind of force is making Mars stronger. So you have to really kind of dig deep to understand the full dignity. Yeah, so let's look at Saturn more. So Saturn has a semi-square with the sun. Semi-square. That's good and bad because Sun square Saturn, Saturn and the Sun are enemies, but Sun is bonifying Saturn because it rules Leo, right? So there is some goodness, some good qualities that come out of here. Yeah, it's sort of like a struggle between the Sun and Saturn, but it's sort of like, in practical terms, these older people, they mean well, right? They have my best interests at heart, but at the same time, they're pushing too hard. They're being too forceful, as a Saturn and Leo would do. It's kind of tyrannical, dictatorial, right? Then what else? Saturn also has a square to Chiron. That's not so good. A lot of pain is coming out of this relationship where Saturn is overbearing on this Mars. Saturn is squaring Uranus as well, which is conjunct my ascendant. So it has a direct relationship to me, both my ascendant Lord and ascendant is square. So it's like, and then Uranus is very rebellious and wants freedom, and Saturn wants to restrict Uranus. So there's, especially when young, there's that, Saturn wants to castrate Uranus. Uranus is the father of Saturn, so it's like resentful because Uranus feels bigger, but it's younger. So like early on, especially because Saturn's ruling childhood, there's going to be issues, major issues, and major pushback against authority, right? Uranus is the ultimate rebel, but so much rebellion that if you're rebelling against everything, what good are you? What can you do? Like how are you going to make it in the world if you're rebelling against the whole world, right? It's kind of difficult. So that all that is playing into it. This Saturn is a major issue for this person, which happens to be me. Very painful and repressive force that's going to take time. Uranus being so, the grandfather, takes even more time than Saturn to fully embody. That the Uranian rebellion for a really mature Uranus is going to take time to grow into, right? Saturn takes time to grow into, Uranus takes even more time. So you need to look at the aspects. Trines are going to be supportive, right? So Mars trine Neptune, which is kind of an odd trine to have, an odd combination, because Mars is very physical, Neptune is very imaginative. But I can tell you that this translates quite well into imagining very physical situations involving myself, right? So if I'm going to imagine stuff, if I'm going to be creative, it could be like, I don't know, like if I was going to make a movie, or maybe be about some guy being like a Superman, or a somebody with like superpowers or something like that, because it's like Mars in Leo conjunct the MC, like a very powerful Mars, and then tied to imagination, right? Stuff like that. Trines are skills, they're supportive. This Mars is supported by Venus, so that's quite good for physicality, sexuality, Mars and Venus combinations. If Mars is in difficult aspect to Venus, it can mean like struggle between a person's own sexuality. They might be bisexual, right? Or they might be asexual. But there's going to be a division there between their masculine and feminine. My masculine and feminine are very integrated. 11 and 11, that's very supportive. So different squares are going to bring a lot of struggle, both internally and externally. The square is going to create a lot of struggles internally, but that struggle is also going to translate into how they relate to the world. So a person with a lot of squares is also going to want to struggle against the world and change things, change the world, right? A person who has all trines and sextiles is just going to have it so easy. They're not going to want to really do anything. They're going to rest on the laurels. They're going to have a certain amount of success and just be cool with it, be done. But a person with squares and inconjuncts is going to want to take that struggle out into the world and affect change for good or bad. Depends on how it goes, how that works. And then like you want to look at what planets are playing a role, what planets are involved. Like if you have a mutual reception, that's very good. Like Mercury is trine my moon, and Mercury is exalted in Virgo, moon is exalted in Taurus. So that's a mutual reception by exaltation, and it's the trine, which is probably the best. So it's a few degrees out. I mean, this could be better, but is quite good for moon and Mercury. Also for Jupiter. Now moon is exalted in Taurus, so it bonifies Jupiter. Moon and Jupiter love each other. They're great companions. Jupiter really expands the heart. So great for the arts, great for humanitarian purposes. These are social houses, so makes a person very loving and loved. I don't feel so loved these days, but maybe, I don't know, whatever. I'm not going to make this too personal, but Jupiter doesn't do that great in Virgo, right? Yeah, it's the opposite. It's domicile in Pisces, so it's in detriment. So Jupiter is not going to have a super positive influence on this moon. Plus, this moon is semi-sextile. It's semi-square, the ascendant. So there's a mixed bag with this moon. Obviously, relationships with mother, personal happiness, ability to become satisfied. And then you'd look, if you want to look further, then you'd also look at the nodes. Well, South node was activated when I was young, but now that I'm past 42, North node is. So that now the first house is more active. So the tensions So the moon is actually was doing better in the first half of life, right? Better relationship with mother, a lot more personal happiness, because of the trine between Virgo and Taurus. Now between Scorpio and the moon, it's a sextile by sign, but because the early degree ascendant and late degree moon, it's semi-square. So there's a lot more tension and personal dissatisfaction. Is bringing out the dissatisfied nature of the moon. So more struggles there. So yeah, you want to look at how the signs are bonifying or what's the word? Malifying, I guess you could say, whether they're adding dignity or removing dignity to the signs, right? This Saturn's hurting because it's in Leo, it's square Chiron and Uranus. Those are two malefics. So and its relationship to the ascendant lord and the ascendant. So that's like for this person, which happens to be me, this Saturn's like gonna be the most difficult, right? Like this Pluto's pretty good because Venus rules Libra, so it's there's not going to be much issues with Pluto. So like abuse, sexual abuse, domination, things of that nature. It's also going to have a more like an secondary ascendant lord, a more energetic, spiritual kind of ascendant lord versus Mars. But Venus is bonifying Pluto, so creativity, imagination, 12th house matters, foreign, isolation, things of that nature are going to be okay. They're going to be, bonified by this Venus. But this Venus, conjunct the sun, that's not so great for Venus. It's not so great for the sun either. The sun will combust the planet, and Venus is a very sensitive planet. It's a very feminine planet. Mercury does better when it's close to the sun. So does Mars. Different planets react differently, but it's good and bad. I mean, Venus conjunct the sun creates somebody who can be more artistic and creative, sensorial, good relationship with beauty, but laziness, indulgence, especially if Venus is activated. So Venus ruling depends which house, but like Venus for a man relates to relationships, right? Female partners, especially if it's ruling the 7th house. So like for this person, talking about myself as a third person. For this person, relationships can be very draining, and they can really throw this person off their course because the sun is our path in life. It's how we relate to the world. So they can become very weak, and their partner, their female partner, can suck all that life energy out of them, right? So it's kind of sad, but this person actually does better single. Unfortunately, perhaps until this person really gains a solid foundation in their career, which is difficult because Saturn is blocking their career path. So this person has to be alone. And not only that, North Node's in the 1st house. So with no personal planets in the 1st house, so this person is going to be very alone in the 2nd half of their life, but they're going to become very strong because of that. And they're going to have to do things all on their own. With Mars on the MC, and really build up their life as sort of like this King Mars person, defying this, Saturn brings fear and limitation. So it's like, it's kind of difficult, but deeply strengthening at the same time, because you just kind of have to overcome all the limitations and fears and restrictions that Saturn wants to impose. Yeah, so the aspects are really important. and so are the nodes. You know, the nodes will activate different things at different times. You know, first half of life, it's gonna activate the you know, the south node. So south node Jupiter, seventh house, so like friends, teachers, that was, you know, all, you know, very that was a huge part of my life early on. And later this kind of, you know, obsession with knowing myself on a deep psychological, astrological way. That's Scorpio, Uranus. But then we also have the squares to deal with, and the difficult relationship with the moon. So I think that's pretty exhaustive. I'm trying to think if there's anything. Oh yeah, there is. So we can look at, I can show you this in astro.com where to find all this. But you want to look at the declination of planets. I don't have any out of bounds planets, which out of bounds would be, I don't necessarily think that would make them more dignified or less dignified. It just means more extreme or less extreme, more balanced or more extreme. And more extreme can be good or bad. It can mean like trailblazing and, you know, pushing the envelope, doing things that nobody's ever done, and versus balance, like my moon is at 0 degrees, very in the middle of the road, right? Very balanced. But then you want to look at the speed of the planets, and that's important. Like my Mercury is pretty slow, and my Mercury gets good scores, you know, because it has two mutual receptions, one with the moon and one with Venus. Venus is a Mercury sign, moon, Mercury's in Venus sign, not by degree. Like between the two, the reception between the moon is better because there's a trine involved. There's no real major aspect between Mercury and Venus, but there is something because the signs, right? But Mercury has two mutual receptions, and it's very slow. You can see 3 days. It went direct station 3 days, and there's obviously much slower Mercuries than mine, but you know, 17 arc minutes per day, that's pretty slow, right? So my Mercury is pretty good, pretty unique. You can look at you know, star aspects. For some reason Algol is not on here, but I can tell you my Mercury is also conjunct Algol, and it is also has a Pallas conjunct my Mercury. So for some reason, I've been blessed with a really, really strong Mercury. Well, Mercury conjunct Algol, some people would say, oh, that's a malefic. That's the most malefic planet in the sky. Yes, but it depends how you use it. Everything, nothing's like really bad. Like even planets in severe detriment or debility can act good if you use it in the right way. Planets conjunct Algol, you need to avoid the things that relate to Algol, which are lower, sort of lower vibrational vices, temptations, right? Sexuality, drugs, alcohol. If you do that, remember when Perseus cut off Medusa's head, he used it as a weapon, as a tool. He first of all he froze he turned to stone with his enemy. I don't recall exactly. But half Medusa's head is poison, half is medicine, right? So if you know how to use these things, you know, it's great advantage. And the reason why Pallas Athena works as an asteroid, works so well with Mercury, is because in the mythology, Mercury, Hermes, gives the sword of discretion to Perseus. You know, the sword symbolizes the ability to discern. It's the sword of discernment, discretion, ability to divide, which is a mental faculty, is a mental skill, right? An intellectual skill to be able to divide and separate and evaluate. And then Pallas Athena brings the shield of reflection and strategy. So these are very good combinations for the intellect. And it's vitally important on a planet like on a star like Algol, which I think is like 25, 26 degrees, depending on when you were born. It moves a little bit slightly. Because there's a lot of temptation there, and you want to be able to have the discernment to overcome that. And it definitely plays out with me. Like, I'm way ahead of the curve in a lot of things that other people fall prey to, like in society. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry without reservation is basically Medusa, right? They will fool you into thinking that this is harmless, or at least, or even healthy for you, and it's like deadly stuff, right? Deadly. Like, there's nothing in there's almost nothing. They do some things, if you're really sick, you might stay alive, but pharmaceutical industry is poison, right? Like, the mental, the psychological drugs are deadly, are some of the worst things out there, because without them you go crazy. And then they say, see, you need you get back on your meds. Without our meds, you're crazy. So you get on the meds, you act normal, but like, they're destroying your brain, and you become dependent. You become a slave, right? So I have full discernment. I'm well aware of that. I'm well aware of any like prickly needles that they want to try and stick in my arm. I'm like, no thanks, I'm good. I don't need any of that. My discernment is pretty good, right? I don't go to doctors and hospitals because I pretty much know better. I have good discernment. I know how to take care of my health. 46, doing good, right? So yeah, I mean, there's different things. You can look to mythologies. Mythologies do carry a lot of weight, especially when they're widely held, because there's a magical element to astrology. There is the psychic collective umbrella that is a real thing. When people believe something, when a lot of people believe something, it becomes powerful. And that's one of the ways that the Illuminati, there's that big scary word, that's one of the ways they manipulate everyone, by controlling the media, controlling the narrative, getting everyone to believe a certain thing. And it becomes that the psychic field creates a certain kind of reality that is very real and very effective. It's not just psychological. It goes beyond psychology, right? This is like the next level of the eighth house secrets, of the occult secrets. It's a real thing. Mythology has real impact. That's why it works. And the more you study astrology, if you study it, like, you'll find that it's a real thing. I can't think of anything else. I mean, there's probably more details, but that's why I do individual readings, to kind of draw out all the details that might get lost in a video like this. But generally speaking, yeah, that's how I look at dignity of planets. So I mean, just a quick thing, like, if you want to look red versus blue, that's one way to look at it, and then you can get into more detail. If a malefic has a lot of red lines, it's going to be difficult for it, right? Like, my Mars has some red lines. These are, I mean, so squares to the nodes. That's difficult. This Mars is going to be angry, and obviously the Saturn has some quite difficult aspects to it. So this person's going to be angry and quite strict, especially when it's angry, right? Quite authoritative and demanding. Yeah. All right. I think I went through it all. No need to go over it again. Yeah. All right. So that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below. Hit the like button if you can, guys. I know it's super hard to hit that like button, but it helps me out a lot. And you know, I just like to see that people hit the like button. So subscribe if you haven't already, leave a comment down below, and come to my class on Sunday. Just, you know, hit me an email, I'll put you on the list. No obligation. Just because you email me, it doesn't mean you're obliged to come, right? Just come if you feel like coming. But get on the list. And what else? Book a reading with me. You can go to my website, macroastrology.com. Even though I'm not proud of my website, it's still there. Or you can just email me directly, macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. And I will see you again soon. Thanks, bye.